Hello. Welcome back to STM Narratives. Before we begin, please comment where you are watching from and the time. Evelyn Roberts had always been a strong woman. At 82 years old, she lived a life filled with both joy and hardship. Widowed at 55, she spent much of her remaining years raising her two children, Emma and Charles, both of whom had moved far away once they'd established families of their own. They were proud of her, often talking about her resilience, how she single-handedly took care of the household, worked odd jobs, and still managed to tuck them into bed with a warm smile. But now, sitting in a stark, unfamiliar room at Riverside Nursing Home, Evelyn couldn't help but feel forgotten. A few years ago, her health had started to decline. Arthritis gnawed at her joints, making it painful to even hold a cup of tea. Her memory had begun to fade, too. Small things at first, like where she left her glasses or the name of a neighbor she'd known for years. But eventually, these small slips turned into larger voids that swallowed up days, conversations, and even faces. When her children finally suggested a nursing home, she had felt both relief and betrayal. She had always prided herself on her independence, but there was no denying she needed help. And so, reluctantly, she had agreed. Riverside seemed like a good enough place at first. The nurses were kind, and the facility boasted a beautiful garden filled with roses, Evelyn's favorite. But it didn't take long for her to realize that she was just another resident in a long line of patients. Time after time, her pleas for assistance, whether to help her change clothes or assist her with her nightly medications, were brushed aside or ignored. "I'll be right with you, Evelyn," they would say. Their eyes never meeting hers, hours would pass. Sometimes, she wouldn't get her medication at all. And despite how uncomfortable or disheartened she felt, Evelyn rarely complained. She was used to taking care of herself, even when the world around her seemed indifferent. But that all changed one brisk afternoon in late October. Evelyn had been struggling with her arthritis for days, the pain becoming unbearable. The simple act of walking down the hall to get a glass of water felt like a monumental task. So she rang her bell for assistance. A young nurse, Claire, appeared, looking rushed and uninterested. "I need help getting up," Evelyn said, her voice soft but firm. Claire sighed, crossing her arms. "You've been calling for help all day, Mrs. Roberts. You need to be patient. We have other residents, too." "I wouldn't ask if I didn't need it," Evelyn said, her voice cracking. "Please." The nurse shot her a cold glance, one filled with annoyance rather than empathy. "We've had complaints from the staff about you, you know. You're being too demanding." Evelyn felt a tightness in her chest. Too demanding? She had only ever asked for help when she truly needed it. But it seemed as though her requests, her very existence, had become a burden. "I'm not being difficult," Evelyn whispered. "I just can't." Before she could finish, Claire snapped, "If you can't take care of yourself, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." The words stung like a slap across the face. Claire turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Evelyn trembling in her chair. She sat there for hours, the words echoing in her mind. Maybe you shouldn't be here at all. The next morning, the head administrator of the nursing home, Mr. Briggs, knocked on her door. He entered with a clipboard, his face set in a practiced, bureaucratic frown. "Mrs. Roberts, it's come to our attention that you've been struggling to adjust here," he said, his tone businesslike. "We've had reports from staff that you're frequently requesting help for tasks that should be manageable for you. We believe it's best that you find another place of care." Evelyn blinked in disbelief. "Are you saying you're kicking me out?" Mr. Briggs cleared his throat. "We believe it's in your best interest. There are other facilities better equipped to handle someone of your needs." Evelyn couldn't find words. Her heart pounded in her chest as fear set in. She was being evicted from the only place she had left to call home, all because she had dared to ask for help. They gave her 2 days to leave. On her last day at Riverside, Evelyn sat in the lobby with her suitcase, feeling more alone than she had in her entire life. Her children had been notified but were too busy to come help right away. "We'll try to arrange something," Emma had said over the phone, her voice distant, but Evelyn knew what that meant. She was on her own. As she sat there, her frail hands clutching her bag, a young man entered the lobby. He looked no older than 25, with dark, unruly hair and a worn denim jacket. He glanced around as if searching for someone before his eyes landed on Evelyn. There was something kind in his gaze, a softness she hadn't seen in years. "Hey there," he said, approaching her. "Are you waiting for someone?" Evelyn didn't know why, but something about this stranger made her want to talk. Maybe it was the warmth in his voice, or maybe it was simply because no one had asked her that question in a long time. I'm, I'm not sure," she replied. "I've been asked to leave." His brow furrowed. "Leave? From here?" She nodded, her eyes dropping to her lap. "They say I'm too much trouble. I just needed some help." The young man, whose name was Aaron, knelt beside her chair, his voice filled with concern. "That doesn't sound right. Everyone needs help sometimes." Evelyn let out a small, bitter laugh. "Not me, apparently." Aaron sat down next to her, his face thoughtful. "You remind me of my grandma," he said after a moment. "She passed a few years ago. She was the strongest woman I knew. Took care of everyone, even when she was the one who needed care." Evelyn smiled weakly. "That sounds familiar." There was a pause before Aaron stood up, determination in his eyes. "You're not going anywhere alone. I'll help you." Evelyn looked at him in surprise. "But you don't even know me." He shrugged. "That doesn't matter. You deserve better than this." Aaron wasn't someone who had a lot of money or resources, but what he lacked in wealth, he made up for in heart. He took Evelyn to his small apartment, a modest one-bedroom place with mismatched furniture and peeling wallpaper. It wasn't much, but to Evelyn, it felt like a palace compared to the cold, sterile nursing home she had just left. For the first few days, Evelyn was in shock. She had gone from feeling invisible to being seen, truly seen, by someone who had no obligation to care for her. Aaron helped her get settled, made her meals, and even took the time to listen to her stories, something no one had done in years. As the days passed, Evelyn began to open up more. She shared stories of her youth, of her husband's passing, of the dreams she once had but never pursued. Aaron listened with genuine interest, laughing at her jokes and offering comforting words when she talked about her hardships. In return, Evelyn found herself becoming a surrogate grandmother to Aaron. She would give him advice, reminding him to chase after his dreams and not to let life's setbacks discourage him. She even started teaching him how to bake, a skill she had perfected over the years. It wasn't much, but it was her way of giving back. Aaron's friends were surprised when they found out about Evelyn. "You're living with an old lady?" one of them asked, incredulous. But Aaron just smiled. "She's family now." Weeks turned into months, and what began as a simple act of kindness blossomed into something more profound. Evelyn had found a new purpose in life, and for the first time in years, she felt loved and accepted for who she was, not for what she could or couldn't do. Aaron, too, found something he didn't know he was missing: a connection, a sense of belonging that went beyond blood. One cold evening in December, as they sat together by the small electric heater, sipping on hot cocoa, Evelyn turned to Aaron, her eyes soft with gratitude. "You've saved me," she said quietly. Aaron looked at her, his expression tender. "No, Evelyn, you saved me." And in that moment, they both knew that love and acceptance didn't always come from where you expected. Sometimes it came from a stranger who saw you, truly saw you, when no one else did. Evelyn had found her hero, and Aaron had found his family. In the end, it wasn't about the grand gestures or the material things. It was about the simple act of kindness that had brought two unlikely people together. And in that, they found a love that was pure, a love that transcended age, circumstance, and hardship, a love that healed. For Evelyn, the days that followed were no longer filled with loneliness or fear. She had found her place, not in a nursing home, but in the heart of someone who cared, and that was enough.